Hello everybody, welcome to Module 3. This is Intersection of Drones and Cybersecurity. In this module, we're going to come together a little bit and but explore further some of the ways that drones can be used in cybersecurity and penetration testing. We're going to go over a little bit of an action plan, just a very basic outline of how you can kind of prepare administratively for using a drone in a pen test. We're going to talk about some data collection and analysis. We're going to go through some ethical and legal considerations and issues towards the end, and we're also going to talk briefly about incident response and how drones can improve our response just a bit. So first up, we're going to get into enhancing penetration testing with drones. So this is going to be some theoretical ideas of how drones can be used, and then just a quick reality-based application to kind of tie that theory together. So up first, we have aerial surveillance and reconnaissance. So the theory here says that drones can be utilized to gather intelligence from a physical security perspective. They can identify vulnerabilities in the physical layout of a target facility, including unguarded entrances, open windows, or ineffective security deployments. So we've talked about this before, right? This is getting the drone up and really utilizing what the drone already has, which is the camera. And this is just getting a bird's eye view, trying to see what we're working with, how things are laid out, if we can notice any sort of physical security issues before we even really dive into this, and we can start noting those things down, either for our report at the end of the penetration test or potentially to pivot off of those physical security concerns or additional concerns and further our exploits. So the application here: by providing a bird's eye view, drones map out a facility's external security measures, which help in planning an intrusion simulation more effectively. Next up, wireless network testing. The theory: drones equipped with network scanning tools can detect and assess the security of wireless networks. They can fly in proximity to a target and carry out an audit of the Wi-Fi network, looking for weaknesses like unsecured networks or poor encryption practices. Application: drones perform aerial Wi-Fi testing to discover access points with weak security, enabling testers to perform network penetration testing from a distance without physical entry. So in this instance, there's a few things that we could be doing, right? Maybe from an engineering standpoint or infrastructure standpoint, if we're going through and we want to see if our Wi-Fi signals are available outside of our facility. Oftentimes we don't want that, right? We only want our network to be contained within our building. A drone can make it either much faster or much easier to do a perimeter scan around a large facility or maybe a campus and assess whether or not Wi-Fi signals are present outside of the building, which potentially could be a security concern. The other thing that we could do here is, let's say we have a Wi-Fi pineapple and an external battery attached to it. We can either affix that to the drone and we can make it a mobile war driving drone, for lack of a better term, or we could combine that with a payload dropper, and we could fashion up this Wi-Fi pineapple and battery in a way that it has some cordage or a loop on it that we can hook to the drone. We can fly it to a hard to reach spot, maybe next to an executive's window or on a lower roof somewhere, and then we can drop that payload where it is. That Wi-Fi pineapple, if it's been pre-configured for the operation, will sit there, it'll run, it'll do what it needs to do, and then at a later time you can come back with that drone and retrieve it, take it with you, and nobody was ever the wiser. So that's a couple of ways that the drones can be used in Wi-Fi testing. And it doesn't just have to be a Wi-Fi pineapple either. I mean, there's a host of tools out there that you could use for network reconnaissance or packet capturing, anything like that. Pretty much anything that you could hold in your hand, you could probably creatively find a way to affix a drone and bring that tool where you physically cannot go with that drone. In a similar breath, sensor deployment. two-folded on this one too, right? So sensor deployment could simply be the sensors on the drones, or external sensors or tools of some sort, like I had just mentioned. So real quick, the theory says drones can be used to deploy various sensors or testing devices in specific locations which can monitor and log data relevant to security assessments. Application: deploying a network sniffing device on the roof of a building to capture data traffic, allowing penetration testers to analyze the data for vulnerabilities. Basically what I was just talking about before on the previous slide. Taking some sort of a tool or an implement, delivering that somewhere on your facility or in your campus that you maybe traditionally couldn't reach, or you certainly couldn't do so covertly, and then allowing that to be left, do what it needs to do, and then be retrieved later. Also, as I was saying, there could just be sensors built into the drone that you want to collect and analyze data from. And so we'll bring it back to some of those multispectral sensors or LiDAR or things like that, more in depth than just your traditional camera that's on a drone, and are certainly purpose built to collect a large amount of very specific, very useful data. It all depends on what it is that you're trying to do. That'll dictate which sensors you ultimately decide that you need to use. So now that we've gone over a few of the different use cases specifically that drones can be used in penetration testing, now we're going to go over a short multi-step process. It's about 7 steps of just a generic, if you don't have one already written down or a policy already in place, this is a basic, I don't want to say step-by-step guide like the title slide says here, but a good starting point, a good jumping off point for you to try and plan out your operation using a drone in your next pen test. So first up, we have the pre-assessment planning. This is where we're going to define the scope. We're going to figure out what it is that we're looking for, what we're hoping to accomplish, all of that stuff. We need to have that all bulleted out and listed. So stakeholders and higher-ups understand what it is that we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish. And also so that way we know that we have successfully completed all of the objectives that we need to, and haven't started to get into scope creep, which is where as you get further into a project and more things kind of become available or obvious, you start to skew away from the original list of objectives that you had and start to go off tangentially onto other things. And sometimes that can lead to you ultimately not getting done what you needed to get done. So in this step 1 pre-assessment planning part, on top of the administrative stuff of the paperwork, we also need to figure out what types of drones we have available to us first, and then what type of drone is going to work best for this particular plan, and then figuring out all the other trying to assess the requirements of the mission versus the equipment that you have on hand, and if you need to purchase, rent, or borrow additional equipment to get that process started. Step 2 in this plan is getting the equipment set up. So this is going to be equipping the drone with necessary tools like making sure the cameras are installed, any sort of additional payloads, Wi-Fi scanners, or custom payloads if you have additional tools or other tools that are more applicable to the operation that you at hand. Say an RFID skimmer or an RFID emulator, trying to assess access control, for example. So on top of setting up the drone physically, we need to make sure that the software is good on it too. So we want to make sure that we have all our software is up to date, all of our firmwares are up to date. Oftentimes with modern drones, the drone itself is going to have firmware, the RC is going to have firmware, and especially with DJI drones, there's firmware for the batteries as well. So you have to make sure that everything is up to date and ready to go, because if your drone has been updated with new firmware but the batteries have not been updated yet, sometimes you may run into an issue where the drone won't fly, or it will have severely unexpected behavior in flight. After we accomplish that, now we're ready to get going. So up first, we're going to have our initial reconnaissance. This is our fact-finding stage. This is our just get out there and see what we're working with step in the plan. So we're gonna do an initial flyover to map the area and identify again the potential security weaknesses, anything else that might stand out. We can people watch, whatever it is that you're trying to look for. This is more of, it's an active process, but it's certainly a very passive active process. You're just kind of putting the drone up, staying away. You're just getting as close as you need to see what you need to see, and then backing off. And then while we're doing this, we're going to get video and pictures of what we're looking at, so we can reference that later when we start to draft up the more technical plan of what we're going to do. And then that comes next. So we're going to get into the network vulnerability testing. We're using network vulnerability testing and Wi-Fi analysis a lot in this course. There are a lot of other things that you can do besides just Wi-Fi. Oftentimes, though, for my operations and for people that I've met who also use drones in some of their pen testing or security auditing use cases, oftentimes are finding that it's Wi-Fi analysis. So that's why it's in here the most, but there are plenty of other things that you could be using drones for. So when we get to step 4 here, and we're actually doing some active processes and we're getting up close to our target, we're going to fly the drone up close enough to be within Wi-Fi range. We're going to do whatever it is that we need to do, and then we're going to get out. Use onboard tools to detect open networks, weak encryption, or poorly secured access points. This is dealer's choice. This is part of where I had made mention before. There are other videos, other educators out there that are going to be able to explain the nitty-gritty part of this much better than I. And I would encourage you that if after watching this course, specifically network or Wi-Fi testing, if you're not already proficient with it, is something that interests you, I would certainly go out and look for some of those people to get up to speed with this. I don't want to go too deep with it here, but just understand that this is the general idea of how we're doing these things. This could be step 5, sensor deployment and data capture. This could be at the same time as, or in addition to, or in place of network analysis. This could be, if applicable, deploy sensors or data capturing devices strategically based on the initial reconnaissance. So this more is touching on the devices that you're going to drop somewhere, place somewhere in a difficult location, and then leave behind. Once you have your initial recon done, you've scanned the network, you've done your network recon, this is the part where now either maybe it's already pre-configured and ready to go, or you have to go back to home base and set this up. This is now the step in the plan where you can drop the Wi-Fi pineapple on that roof and leave it there for as long as that battery will keep it going, and then come back at a later date and pick it up when either any suspicion is gone or you have the opportunity. And once we've collected all of this data and we have all these images and photos and packets to go through and everything else, we get to data analysis and reporting. So once we have all this data, we're going to put it in. We're going to analyze it however you choose to or however you need to. There's many ways to do that, and there's many different tools out there to analyze a lot of this different data. Some of which comes native with some drones or the third-party payloads. Some of which is going to be using something like Wireshark to go through PCAP data. So it all depends on what you were collecting, how you're going to analyze it. But once we have it, we want to analyze it. We want to find the vulnerabilities. We want to see how effective our operation is, and then compare that to how effective our pre-existing security measures are. And from that, we're going to try to generate a report for ourselves, for any stakeholders, the higher-ups, easy to read human language that explains what it was that we did, what we were looking for, a breakdown of the data that we we're able to collect and the inferences we were able to make from that. And then once all of that is done, we get into post-testing review, which is a debrief of the operation with anybody that is privy to that information. And then with that, we want to make sure that everything was legal, it was ethical, that it was within scope, we found vulnerabilities or we didn't, and if we did, what are the next steps? And then that goes to, you know, oftentimes your security team is going to start trying to draft up new policy or procedures, or starting to find ways to fix the issues that you were able to find. And so that's it. It's a it's not an easy process, but when you break it down into steps, you know, simple steps like that, it makes it a little bit more palatable and a little bit easier to digest. But now that we're done with that, that will conclude lesson 1 of module 3. So just as before, we're going to do a quick knowledge check at the end of this lesson, and then I will see you in lesson 2. Thank you.